Hello there, welcome back once again. This is the Lost Songs of Ireland podcast. I'm the host, Bill O'Brien. Thanks for tuning in. Today, with a bit of an interesting podcast, we're going to talk a bit about cows and how cows have influenced Irish folklore and traditions. Um, Cows are very, very important in Ireland. Historically, the people that are called Irish now, the modern day Irish, the Gaels, arrived on the island of Ireland in the middle of the Bronze Age, mid Bronze Age. They had bronze tools and the technology to make bronze tools, and they had cows, and obviously the technology to breed and keep cows. So from the very, very earliest days of Irish civilization, cows have always been a very, very central figure for us because of this. In in olden times, in sort of Bronze Age up into medieval times, cows were generally used as a measure of wealth between various tribes, chieftains, and kings across history. Many wars were also fought over cows. Um, Cows were a typical target of raids as well. If a tribe or a kingdom, what was it, launching an attack on another one of the first things they do would be to target the cows out in the fields, obviously depriving whoever they're attacking of their sources of food, milk and meat, and as well their general wealth, because cows were used for trading, almost like a currency as well. Um, the Vikings, as well as this, during the times of Viking invasion, which was over 1,000 years ago. You're talking about the year 700-ish onwards. Vikings would very frequently venture into the lands of the Gaelic chieftains and slaughter their cows and steal their meat. It was kind of the typical Viking raid. There's lots of great stories about this in medieval texts and various other sources. Now, as well as a historical importance, cows serve a very important folklore importance as well. We're going to talk a little bit about that and touch on some of the more important stories that exist within Irish culture and Irish folklore. Um, you've got the Cattle Raid of Cooley, which is probably the most important epic story of all of Irish folklore. It truly is an epic story. There's probably as it's The way I like to describe the Cattle Raid of Cooley is it's like the ancient Celtic version of the Marvel cinematic universe. If you watch any of the Marvel movies, there's about 4 or 5 of them come out every year. And what's special about this franchise is all of the movies all link up into one big story. Like a few years ago, you had Endgame, the Avengers Endgame, and there was like 20 to 30 different movies featuring the characters of Endgame that all sort of told their own story, how they led to be where they were during the Endgame movie. The Cattle Raid of Cooley is quite a lot like this. It's a big story about a queen of Connacht stealing a cow from the king of Ulster, but it features all of the great characters in the Ulster cycles of Irish mythology, and as well as that, there's lots of kind of magical items that feature in this story, and each one of those magical items has its own origin story from a previous story. So to approach the story of the Cattle Raid of Cooley, the Táin, you kind of have to learn about 12 to 20 stories beforehand so that it fully makes sense. And in this respect, the Táin, the Cattle Raid of Cooley is the central story in Irish mythology. So that's very important. It's very, very there's clearly a reason for the cow to have its place in such an important part of folklore, and I believe that's because of the role that the cow played in Ireland for thousands of years previously, and still does today, as a measure of wealth, as an animal that gives food, that gives life, So it's not surprising at all for a country with the history of islands that an animal such as the cow would have um, such a central position within our folklore. And there's quite a few references to other cows in folklore, but what I'm going to do now is I've actually found, in terms of songs for this episode, I've got a couple of kind of random ones, really, like funny little songs about cows that I've found. I'm going to play one now. This is not me singing. This is Paddy Tunney, and it's the cow that drank the poitín.
There's a man in our dahi, he's lahi and tall. He's one Paddy Shanahan, as we do call. 'Tis he brews the cordial that does exceed all, and he bids all the doctors and old Donegal. For if you were gasping and ready to die, the smell of it sparking would lift your heart high. Then hoist it up higher, close under your nose, and for man loves it wherever he goes. We can't have a christening without it at all. We drink and sing chorus, shake hands and sing all. Here's a health to your gossips, as we do them call, and if you be a ghost that you may meet us all. Now Paddy the rascal of late he had been, with steam and hot water he brewed his poitín. He left it in barrels, I hear people say, till his cow took a notion of drinking one day. As soon as our Branny this notion did take, she first broke the burra and then pulled the stake. She went to the barrel and she drunk her fill, and believe me, she didn't leave much for the still. When she got drunk, she began to feel shame. Says she, Paddy Shanahan, calling him by his name, I'm as drunk as a beggar with the juice of your malt, but Paddy, I warn ye, it isn't my fault. She hiccuped and staggered and challenged him to fight, and swore that in through him she'd let the delight. That his breed was all coward, she told him to note, and she dared him to tramp on the tail of her coat. Next day she woke up with a bad broken horn. She then started to curse the day she was born. She cursed Barham and Kilty and Podgin likewise, and all the still tinkers in under the skies. She advised all good cows for to mind their fair name, and never take drink that would bring them to shame. She whispered to Paddy, she says in his ear, sure you won't tell Una I went to the beer. Oh Paddy, a Vic, if it's mercy you'll have, I'll bring you each year now a fine heifer calf. Oh Paddy, oh I'm fond of the spree, but Paddy, a Vic, we're the same you and me. So Paddy had mercy, we give him renown. When Una went to milk her, the milk it was brown. Poor cow then, says Una, our heart's blood she's given, we'll never be wanting as long as she's living. So drink and be merry and forgive the old cow. He's a handsome old Shanahan, whether or how. We never want Podgin, head, worm or still, on that sanctified place they call Cúailgne of Still.
Okay, that was the cow that drank the poitín, or Paddy Shanahan's cow, sung by Paddy Tunney. So it turns out Paddy Shanahan is actually a real person. It was a real person for up in Donegal. He was well known in the area for brewing poitín, and there's a song about him. I think it might have been one of those songs that was kind of segued into an advert for a product, as often happens. Just a quick note as well. Poitín is whiskey without tax paid on it. If anyone has never heard the term before, it's moonshine. It's an Irish version of moonshine. So the story of how cows came to Ireland, according to Celtic folklore and mythology, is quite an interesting one. So the long and the short of it is, one day a beautiful sea maiden appeared on the coast, long ago. A very beautiful sea maiden. Everybody that saw her at the beach was absolutely stunned by how beautiful she was. There's some versions of this story call her a mermaid, or a sea maiden. She would have been from the land of the sea, the realm of Lir. Lir is the sea. In Irish, it's the god that represents the sea. So she would have come from the land of Lir, and washed up on the shore. And the people that saw her approached her, walked down to her, tried to communicate with her, and she hadn't a word of Irish. She couldn't communicate with them at all. So they brought them back. So they brought her back to their chieftain, and their chieftain was absolutely stunned by the beauty of this mysterious sea maiden that just appeared. And she stays with him. She's found on Samhain. She's found on Samhain Eve, which is Halloween, which is the day where the she can walk on earth, can walk among the land of the living. So she's brought back to the home of this chieftain, and she lives with them for some time, stays with them, learns to speak the language of the Gael, and after this, she says to the people that she'd come to tell them that after she returns to the sea, there will be some cows come out of the sea for the people of Ireland. The cows that she prophesied were great and strong ox that produced abundant amount of milk and meat. On hearing this, the chieftain was very, very pleased, very excited about this. And I'm not sure. There's some versions of the story have him falling in love with her. Some don't. But the one thing they do all have in common is on Bealtaine, she decides she has to return. She must return to the kingdom of Lir. So she does. She tells everybody in the tell everybody in the chieftain's camp, I have to return to whence I came. When I return, you must watch over the shoreline where I appeared, and three beautiful cows will emerge from the sea. And everybody goes with her down to the shoreline. She jumps into the water and completely disappears, never to be seen again in the land of Era. And the people, very excited about the prophecy that she gave her, sit and wait. They wait all summer. Bealtaine is in May, the beginning of May, so they wait all summer. Every day there's always somebody watching the coastline, waiting for these cows. The summer goes by, nothing happens, nothing appears. We get to Samhain, a year after she first arrives, nothing appears at all, and quite dejected. The people of the tribe start to feel like they're going to give up. But maybe this was just a trick being played on us by the she. But eventually, the following Bealtaine, there's people down at the shore doing a bit of fishing, and all of a sudden these three beautiful cows just emerge from the sea and wander up onto the shore. These three cows, there's the Beau Fan, the white cow, the Beau Rua, the red cow, and the Beau Du, or the Beau Dove, which is the black cow. They wander up the shoreline, straight past the people, don't even acknowledge the people of the shore, and they all split off into different directions. The brown cow heads north, the white cow heads east, the white cow heads east, and the red cow heads south. And each of them make their way across across islands, sort of just kind of wandering, oblivious to everyone and everything around them. The path by which these cows wandered is actually marked still today. There are many little townlands, villages, and hills that carry an Irish name with them, which means the way of the white cow, or the way of the brown cow, or the red cow. And there's quite a few Bailiach Nabo that still exist today in Irish place names that were obviously named after this story. And one of the more interesting names derived from this story is Bailiach Nabo Fan, which translates directly to the way of the white cow, and this is the name in modern Irish that is given to the Milky Way galaxy that we all exist in today. So I think that's very, very significant that the name of the actual galaxy that our solar system and planet exists in takes its name after the origin of cows in Celtic mythology. So if that doesn't spell out how fundamentally important the cow is in Irish ancient culture, I'm not sure what else does, really, to be honest. So I have another little song here now. It's another bit of a random one. It's a funny local song I found. It's called "The Cows of Roscrea," which is in North Tipperary. And this ballad kind of explores a few themes quite loosely, really. First of which is obviously, the importance and the role of cows in Irish society, and a little bit about there's references to the labour movement that was prevalent at the time. The last verse, essentially, the story of the song is there's a bunch of cows that are wandering down, and they're towards the end of their life, and they're off to be, sent to make calf meal, which is a very, very unpleasant process, from what I've heard. Was essentially when the cow could no longer produce milk, or was too old to be economically viable, it would be sent up to be turned into calf meal. And the cows in this story are lamenting that they're being sent to be turned into calf meal, and decide to join a union, stand shoulder to shoulder, and just say, no, we're not going to do this anymore. So I do kind of like that. It's kind of personifying the labour movement that was kind of brewing at the time, around the time that the song was written, but ascribing it to cows, which I think is a really cute one. So here's the Cows of Roscrea for you. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this. I stood on a bridge of a cold frosty morning. Me mind was at ease and me thoughts far away, when a bunch of old cows down from Scariff came marching. They were off to make calf meal above in Roscrea. They were led by a Kerry whose bones were projecting. Her eyes, they were dim, and she'd seen better days. It was little she thought when she was calved on Loch Mountain. She'd be off to make calf meal above in Roscrea. When I was a yearling on the green hills of Flagmount, everywhere I went was I got the sway. Now I am old and looked at with scorn, and tomorrow I'll make calf meal above in Roscrea. 'Tis well I remember the Bodyke evictions, when we kicked the old sheriff right out of the way. The peelers all ran when we charged them at Feakle, and tomorrow we'll charge them above in Roscrea. The times they are changed, and so is the people. The drovers lie dead and under the clay. The trains and the lorries pulled out of the station. They're off to make calf meal above in Roscrea. They were driven to the station, though sad and dejected. They were told to move on and make no delay, when up spoke this old Kerry, saying, don't be downhearted, but cock up your tails and 3 cheers for Roscrea. "Are you telling the truth?" says an owl cow from Galway. "If you live long enough, you won't find this pay. Let's all join the union, stand shoulder to shoulder, and refuse to make calf meal above in Roscrea." Okay, that was the Cows of Roscrea. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to finish up with one more little story from Celtic mythology and folklore. This is the coming of Lugh, which features a very, very prominent and another important cow tied with Irish folklore that pops up in a few places. So the setting for this is after the Tuatha De Danann, which are the Irish deities, the Celtic deities. They defeated a race of giants that previously inhabited Ireland, Erin, and kind of banished the Fomorians to live in the sea or in islands off the coast. One of the kings, the leaders of the Fomorians, was a guy called Balor of the Strong Blows, or sometimes Balor of the Evil Eye. He was reputed to have an evil eye that he kept a patch on, and if anybody stared into it, they would die. So there was a lot of fear. Balor was a very, very fear-inducing character for the Tuatha De Danann. This is the story of the coming of Lugh of the Long Arms. Lugh was a king or a chieftain, however you want to call it, of the Tuatha De Danann, one of the first kings mentioned in the mythological cycle. I'm gonna tell this direct. I'm gonna read this directly from Lady Gregory's interpretation of this interpretation and translation of this tale, which is absolutely fantastic. It comes from her book Irish Myths and Legends, Gods and Fighting Men, which I'd absolutely recommend anyone pick up if you've even the slightest interest in Irish mythology, because she did an absolutely fantastic job of piecing it all together. So I'm going to read this out more or less word for word. There might be a few things that I might need to explain, and I'll do that as I go along. So this is now the story of the birth of Lugh. The time the Fomor used to be coming to Ireland, Balor of the Strong Blows, or as some call him, of the Evil Eye, was living on the island of the Tower of Glass. This was a danger for ships that went near that island, for the Fomor would not come out and take them. And some say the sons of Nemid in the old times, before the Firbolgs were an island, passed near it in the ships, and what they saw was a tower of glass in the middle of the sea, and on the tower something that had the appearance of men, and they were against it with druid spells to attack it. And the Fomor worked against them with druid spells of their own, and the sons of Nemid attacked the tower, and it vanished, and they thought it was destroyed, but a great wave rose over them, and all of their ships went down, and all that were in them, and the tower that was there as it was before, and Balor living in it. And it is the reason he is called of the Evil Eye. There was a power of death in one of his eyes, so that no person could look at it and live. It is the way it got that power. He came passing one time by a house where his father's druids were making spells of death, and the window being open, he looked in, and the smoke of the poison spells was rising up, and it went into his eye. And from that time he had to keep it closed, unless he wanted to be seen, to be the death of some enemy. And then the enemy that were with him would lift the eyelid with a ring of ivory. Now a druid foretold one time that it was by his own grandson that he would get his death. And he had at that time but one child, a daughter, whose name was Ethlyn. And when he heard what the druid had said, he shut her up in a tower on that island, and he put 12 women with her to take charge of her and to guard her, and he bade them never to let her see a man or hear the name of a man. So Ethlyn was brought up in this tower, and she grew to be very beautiful, and sometimes she would see men passing in the curraghs. Curragh is a little boat. And sometimes she would see a man in her dreams. But when she would speak of that to the women, they would give her no answer. So there was no fear on Balor. He went on with war and robbery, as he was used, seizing every ship that passed by, and sometimes going over to Ireland to do destruction there. Now Now it chanced at that time that there were 3 brothers of the Tuatha De Danann living together in a place that was called Drum na Táin, on the ridge of the fire. Gobnu, Samthon, and Cian. Cian was a lord of the land, and Gobnu was the smith that had such a great name. Now Cian had a wonderful cow, the Glass Gavin, and her milk never failed, and everyone that heard of her coveted her, and many had tried to steal her away, so that she had to be watched day and night. And one time Cian was wanting some swords made, and he went to Gobnu's forge. He brought the Glass Gavin with him, holding her by the halter. When he came to the forge, his 2 brothers were there, for Samthon had brought some steel to have weapons made for himself. And Cian bade Samthon to hold the halter, while he went to the forge to speak with Gobnu. Now Balor had set his mind for a long time on the Glass Gavin, but he had never been able to get near her up to this time. And he was watching not far off, when he saw Samthon holding the cow. He put on the appearance of a little boy, having red hair, and came up to him and told him that he heard his 2 brothers that were by the forge saying to one another that they would all use his steel for their own swords, and make his of iron. "By my word," said Savon, "they will not deceive me so easily. Let you hold the cow, little lad," he said, "and I'll go in to talk to them." With that he rushed into the forge, and a great anger on him. And no sooner did Balor get the halter in his hands than he set out, dragging the glass along with him to the strand and across the sea to his own island. When Cian saw his brother coming in, he rushed out, and there he saw Balor and the glass out in the sea. And he had nothing to do then but to reproach his brother, and to wander about as if his wits had left him, not knowing what way to get his cow back from Balor. At last he went to a druid to ask advice from him, and this is what the druid told him: that so long as Balor lived, the cow would never be brought back, for no one could go within reach of his evil eye. Cian then went to a druid woman, Birog of the mountain, for her help, and she dressed him in woman's clothes and brought him across the sea in a blast of wind to the tower where Etlin was. There she called to the woman in the tower and asked them for shelter, for a high queen that she was after saving from some hardship. And the woman in the tower did not like to refuse the woman of the Tuatha De Danann, and they let her in, and her comrade. Then Birog, by her enchantments, put them all into a deep sleep, and Cian went in to speak with Etlin. And when she saw him, she said that was the face she had seen in her dreams. She gave him her love, but after a while he was brought away again on a blast of wind. And when her time came, Etlin gave birth to a son, and when Balor knew that, he bade his people put the child in a cloth and fasten it with a pin, and throw him into the current of the sea. And as they were carrying the child across an arm of the sea, the pin dropped out, and the child slipped from the cloth into the water, and there they thought he was drowned. But he was brought away by the Birog of the mountain, and she brought him to his father Cian, and he gave him to be fostered by Taelta, daughter of the king of the great plain. It was thus Lu was born and reared. And some say Balor came and struck the head of Cian on a white stone, and that was the blood marks on it to this day. But it is likely that was some other men struck his head off, for it was by the sons of Tara that Cian came to his death. So that was the coming of Lu, one of the earliest stories in Irish folklore. As I said, Lu is one of the he'd nearly be the equivalent of Zeus in our pantheon. There are a few kings of the gods. They kind of took it in turns, according to the folklore. So that should give you a bit of an idea, really, about how absolutely central and pivotal the cow was in both in Irish mythology and folklore, as well as cultural history. In that, you know, our biggest epic tale is about the theft of a cow and the birth of the head of the pantheon of our gods. His origin story is tied directly to another story of the theft of another cow. So hopefully that'll give you a little bit of an idea as to the role the cow played within Irish mythology. There are a lot more of these stories I'd love to go into. Perhaps I will another time. There's a lot of cow-centered stories in there anyway. So I'm going to leave it at that. we're on the half-hour mark, which is kind of what I was aiming for these podcasts. I'm for the time being, I'm going to do one of these every 2 weeks. For now, just until I've got my formula down. There's a lot to think about in making these kind of podcasts, as you know, as a good bit of research and putting it together and scripting and that kind of thing. And I'm still working out the best way forwards. I hope you enjoyed that anyway. I will mention as well, I have actually set up a Patreon account now. So if anybody is loving what I'm doing and would like to support me in digging up these old stories and songs and putting them out there for you to enjoy, it would be fantastic if you were to take a look at the Patreon. Even just the price of a pint once a month really goes a long way. There's a few things that I need to spend on for this project. I'd like to set up a proper website with all of these together, so that I'd have actually you could have the lyrics of the songs that I'm digging up and how I found them, which I can't really put into a podcast format. So once that's set up, I'll have all my resources in one place, so that if there's a particular song or a story that takes your interest, you can look more deeply into it, and I'll put all the links and information that I have there. But for now, I'll leave it at that. Thank you very, very much for tuning in. And like I said, if any of you feel like reaching out, if you have any questions or would just like to support me, that would be fantastic. I'm Bald Bill on Instagram. You can message me on there. And thanks for tuning in to the Lost Songs of Ireland. I'll look forward to singing to you in the next episode. Look after yourselves and take care.